All right, hey everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Admittedly, the title of the talk's a little clickbaity, but hopefully at the end of it you'll see where I'm coming from and how I think it's kind of a new paradigm for developing software, and it really does build on top of a lot of the agent themes that you've been hearing throughout today. But first, little introduction about myself. So I'm Mike Donovan, as said, VP of Product at Docker. I'm sure a lot of you know about Docker already, so I don't need to go over that. Before this, I was at a company called Sauce Labs. I ran product there, which is like a testing infrastructure tool in the dev tool space. My background into product management, though, really begins as an engineer for over 15 years. So I never thought I'd stand up here as a head of product. Thought I'd be an engineer for the rest of my life. But I have really made that transition and focused on building great products for developers in that career and loving every minute of it. When I'm not thinking about dev tools or work or product or anything, I do have 3 kids, so they keep me busy. And then if I'm not dealing with those kids and work, I'm usually swimming, biking, and running in that order. So if anybody does triathlons, I'd love to talk about that. All right, back to the topic. So, like, the way we've interacted with computers traditionally has been, I think, in a way where humans have done most of the non-deterministic work, right, and computers have done the deterministic tasks. We've basically had the humans do a lot of the planning work, which I consider like the non-deterministic work, the creative work on what you should actually do to solve a given problem. A lot of different pathways that you can take, and then we've asked a computer program, a tool, a service, an API to actually execute tasks. And I think that GenAI and agents have generally been changing the way that we've been using computers. And I think generally, if I take a step back, we've really been asking GenAI applications and computers to do more of the non-deterministic work, more of the planning, while still also being the executors of that task, so that the humans, we can really just give it a goal, we can assess the output, and ideally become more productive. And so I thought it'd be interesting to explore how far we've come on this journey. It started, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, models. Everybody knows about large language models. They're great at executing tasks. I think the output can be very creative, the output can be varied, so don't, I guess, quote me on the specific definition, the Wikipedia definition of determinism, but I think that the tasks that we're asking the models that they can do, very deterministic outputs in terms of what kind of problems they can solve. So, but they're actually fairly limited when they're only as good as the context you provide it, right? They fall flat on their face if you ask it to do something that it wasn't trained to do. You can retrain models, of course, there's valid use cases for that, but I think that in general that becomes fairly expensive and hard to maintain and not really applicable to a wide range of solutions. So then we started to augment models with external knowledge, right? This is where you connect it to an external database with extra context. RAG is essentially the canonical form of this. And that was great. It helped make the models more able to do more tasks, but it did not make them really, it still was inflexible, right? It still was only able to execute given tasks, and it just did so more precisely, more accurately. Where we are now, as a lot of speakers have talked about, is we're in the agents world, right? And this is really where these, I think, more simplistic systems of models and databases, it's kind of a simple architecture. They're becoming very compound in nature. They're becoming very complex systems, more like the architectures of systems that we've built in computers for decades. And those compound systems also have a lot of control logic in them, right? The compound system is very modular, has a lot of different components, and it also has control logic in it. And this is what I think agent architectures are starting to shape and to look like, and they're starting to enable more agents to do more non-deterministic tasks. So what are some of the properties of an agent that help it do non-deterministic tasks? The first is that it has memory, right? So it has access to the specialized context it needs in order to do the various jobs that it's able to do, and it can access the history of tasks that you've asked it to do. So large context is important. It has instructions, right? This can come in the form of initialization prompts that you give your agent. in order for it to know how to act, how to think. You can tell an agent whether or not it should think fast and just do the task as quickly as possible, or if it should think slow and maybe do some more planning. And you have to give it those kind of instructions to set up how it's going to attack the problems. And then the most important thing, and the thing we'll spend the rest of the talk on, are the tools, right? An agent by itself who just comes up with a plan but can't actually execute anything is fairly useless. So the ability for an agent to have access to a lot of different tools is really important for it to be able to try things out, put the output back into memory, run a new plan, and go through that cycle that we as humans do all the time, right? We have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have a large memory that just continuously goes through that loop of planning and execution. Now, that world of agents and the world of tools is very new, relatively speaking, and it's been fairly complex. And this is where the model context protocol came out, right, from Anthropic. And you've heard a couple speakers talk about this, but this is really what I think enables an entire ecosystem of agents and tools to exist. As I mentioned, new protocol open source by Anthropic. It creates a really standard interface for these agents to get access to tools and for LLMs to access tools and to access the existing ecosystems of tools that are out there. And it allows you to integrate both with data sources, third-party tools, your local computer, local resources, really anything your computer can do. Quick walkthrough of the architecture on the screen is helpful just to get some of these concepts in your mind. The first is the host, right? This is like an actual client environment that's essentially has the control logic that coordinates between the large language model and your tools and maintains the memory and all that. And then there's MCP servers. These are essentially the wrapper, the abstraction around the tool that is exposed to the host. And that server is very simple, and it just interacts with the actual tool, right? That tool could be a local resource. It could be something out on the internet. It could, again, be anything that your computer has access to. And the host and the server, they just communicate over a very simple protocol that's kind of pretty similar to how like Visual Studio Code interacts with extensions. And it's simple, it's quite novel because it's so simple. So this is great, but it doesn't come without problems, of course, and this is where Docker comes in. So the world of MCP servers, they're simple. There's a lot of different SDKs, a lot of different programming languages. There's a lot of GitHub repos out there with MCP servers, but there's no standard way to actually deploy these tools, deploy these MCP servers, and there's in a way that resolves all the dependencies that might be needed, especially as MCP servers become more and more complex. You're going to have more unique dependencies. It's going to be harder for it to work from one machine to another. And this is essentially the problems that Docker has been solving for over a decade now. And so what we've done in partnership with Anthropic has been to start to essentially wrap all the MCP servers in Docker containers through a standard interface that then allows them to be easily deployed anywhere, and it doesn't depend on any one programming language to be available on the host machine because it's all just running in a Docker container, right? As long as it works in a container, and you can run that container on your machine, it will work in the MCP server. And it also becomes much more secure by design because of this, because containers are isolated. It's essentially a sandbox that you're giving that tool, that program, the affordance to run in. And when you're, as I'll show you some of these tools, when you're starting to run these things, I mean, you're allowing the agent to execute code on your behalf in your machine, so security needs to be top of mind so that you don't give it access to things that you don't want it to access to. And then the other thing that I think I'm really excited about by introducing or merging these two ecosystems together between MCP and Docker is that, I mean, Docker is an existing ecosystem with thousands of tools, millions of tools that already exist, that are Docker containers that live out on Docker Hub. This essentially is a way that jumpstarts this community to have access to all the tools that are already containerized. So I thought I'd try my luck at a demo using some agents here, and let's see how it works. I will say there's a little unpredictability with this stuff as I've been going back and forth. All right, so first let's get our bearings with some of these the tools that we're going to use. So I've got Claude Desktop. I'm also going to be showing Cursor and then Docker Desktop. These are really the three tools that are coming together for this. In Claude Desktop, you have the ability to add an MCP server so that you can extend this to become like an agent, right? And you have the same availability in Cursor and a couple other host environments. One of the common things that you might want to be able to do with, or that I want to do with a large language model is summarize YouTube videos, right? Because I don't really feel like sitting and watching all those YouTube videos. So maybe I'll go ahead and ask it to summarize this and see how well it does. And there's a particular video that I like. Where'd my thing go? Oh, here. So I'm a big Carl Sagan fan. I don't know who else is a Carl Sagan fan, right? Okay, so then let's ask it to, can you summarize this video for me? It's probably going to crap out. No, I'm just kidding. It's probably just going to say no, right? So it doesn't have the ability to do this. Like I mentioned, it's a model. It only has the context that it was trained on. It doesn't have access to tools, doesn't have access to anything. There is this little thing down here, though, if you notice, any Claude Desktop users, they've added this little icon that lets you know how many MCP servers are available. So I have not added an MCP server that can do this yet. But what I have done in Claude is configured an MCP host environment that is based on Docker containers. So if I jump over to Docker Desktop, if you don't know about Docker Desktop, this is a tool that you can use to basically manage images and containers locally, remotely. And it's also like an access to the entire ecosystem of containers. We added an extension that's called the MCP catalog. And what this essentially gives you access to is the large ecosystem of MCP servers that have been containerized. With some really quick configuration, you basically install it in Docker Desktop, you go to settings. It's very simple to actually configure. All of the different MCP clients are kind of the same right now, where there's a file that you have to change and you tell it what command to run for the MCP server. So we have an AI tool called Gordon. I didn't actually configure it to use that. But I did configure it to use Claude Desktop, which is it's a very simple file that you adjust to add an MCP server here. Hopefully you can all see that. And the command is very simple. It's using a existing Docker image that lives on Docker Hub that basically just routes traffic from one port to another. And then I've also configured it for Cursor, which again, really simple, same kind of configuration. So if I go over to the catalog, I can see that I've got a lot of different options here. We're constantly adding new MCP servers. If you have ideas for this, love to hear it, or please submit a PR to add it. And of course, there's one for YouTube, because why would that work? Why would I do a demo without that? So I can just quickly add this now, and it will have essentially added this tool to that MCP server, so now it has new capabilities. Let's go over here and refresh. Might have to quit Claude Desktop and reset. Okay, great. I hope that error doesn't matter. Okay, so, but you can see now there's 4. There was 3 before, now there's 4 tools available. The Git transcript tool is now available. So let's ask it to try again, right? Because it learned a new tool. It's very much matrixy, right? It plugged in and learned how to fly a helicopter. And now it's another thing that's really interesting about how clients are interacting, how these agents are interacting with MCP is that it's asking for permission. I think this is all about the security model, right? It's not allowing you to just run it. It wants you to be in control. I'm assuming we'll all get more comfortable with this. This will start being more seamless. But right now you have to say, yep, allow for this chat, and it's going to go out and it's invoking. You can see it here. It's running the Git transcript, which is a method. It's a tool to program a little function that's called, and it goes and runs a transcript API to give me now a summary. It has a new tool, new capability unlocked. And the other thing that's I think really interesting here is that I didn't exactly tell it the specific task to do, I said to summarize it. I didn't say go get a transcript for a YouTube video. I just said summarize it. It did a little bit of planning to figure out what that means and then what tool I should call. Interesting little quick use case. I sat here and I said, like, I want to now start extending this to service me better and what the kind of things I need to do on a daily basis. At Docker, we use Notion a lot as like our sort of database, wiki page, all that stuff. So I thought, why not add an MCP server that allows me to integrate with Notion and just basically extend the knowledge base of my agent to do that. So to do this, I went on a journey to try and understand how to do that. I did find a existing project actually that somebody had written that was doing this. Let me find it. Okay, so I did find an existing project that somebody had started to write. It needed to be tweaked a little bit, but it was essentially creating an MCP server for accessing the Notion API. Notion API is very simple. So I forked it and started to adjust it. The basics of an MCP server are, I hope you can see this. I'll scroll to the bottom at first. I'll do a little bit of scrolling so you can see it. But you essentially have to initialize you initialize this tool with the MCP server. Oh God, hold on. And yeah, so you're initializing it with the MCP server in a main function. This is a TypeScript file for those who don't know. And then that's what this is doing. It's just registering the tool, and then you tell the MCP server what are the different functions that this tool can provide, or what are the different tools that this server has available to the MCP host. And then each of these is essentially a TypeScript function. And these TypeScript functions are very simple. Maybe I'll show one just so you can see it. It's basically just calling, an HTTP call to fetch the Notion API. Very simple. The other thing I had to do, because this by itself is just a TypeScript file. I'm using the MCP catalog from Docker as a way to extend this broadly. So I had to create a Docker file, wrap this as a Docker container. It's a very simple Docker file. I use Cursor to help me write this, which is always nice, following best practices. It's using a multi-stage build. For those who don't know about that, you can basically have the first stage of your build with all your dev dependencies in it. It's usually a fatter container with more software in it because you need to build your actual code. And then there's a second stage, which is the production ready stage. You basically only need your compiled code and none of the dev dependencies. But at the end of this, I have a Docker image that essentially is my tool. I kind of quickly published this over to Docker Hub. We have our namespace here. This is Docker Hub for those who don't know. This is the world's largest container registry. We have an MCP namespace, which we're publishing all of our MCP servers, and this is what you can submit yours to. And so I added my little Notion server here, and then it shows up in the catalog under MCP Notion server. Pretty cool. It's not enabled yet. I'll go ahead and enable it. Works just like the other YouTube transcript one. The difference, which is another interesting sort of value proposition of what we're doing with this catalog, is that you can see there's a secret that's attached to this server, and because I need an API key, right? And so when if you think about all these different tools running around needing different API keys to access all these different services, you don't want those secrets being spread everywhere. This is all managed in one place for all your different agents to use. And so I've already configured that so you don't see my copy paste of my API key. Okay, great. So now I've got this configured. Let's go over to Claude. Let me start a new chat. Let's see if I get my new tools registered on a refresh. Great, a lot more tools now, right? All those functions have now been added as tools for my agent to access. Okay, I'm going to go back over to Cursor because there's a specific prompt. I've been trying to make this as deterministic of a demo as possible, which is not actually, it's just interesting as you see the agent think. Maybe I'll even show you some of the variability here. All right, so I'm asking it now, I'm going to get rid of this because this final sentence is what makes it really work. Can you summarize all of my Notion pages about MCP, right? It's like, let's just see what it does. And you should be coming out with a plan here. It's going to ask me to authorize a lot of different tools, a couple different tools for it to access that come through that MCP Docker server. Querying Notion, getting a list of pages. It's going to start now trying to get the contents of each page, which is very interesting. And then I think it's going to fail because it doesn't know exactly how to format the parameters to the tool. So there's something wrong in I think the way I've coded the agent a little bit. But what I think is so interesting is that it keeps trying, and this really gets to the heart of maybe the non-deterministic aspect of this, is that like it's going to keep trying, it's going to keep using the feedback loop from one tool invocation to try to make a new plan, and then eventually it does sort of crap out here. It's funny, yesterday this did work, it was able to figure it out. So and then instead what I figured out needed to happen, and at least this worked an hour ago, so we'll see. If I give it a little more information about how to use my tool, then this should work. Well, we'll see. So it's going to do some of the same steps where it's querying Notion to understand what pages. It does find the pages. It does go and now use the extra bit of context I gave it to pass in the right ID, the right parameter name. And I think it's going to go ahead and get the page contents. There's another API it had to call. I didn't even know this API existed about block, like who knows all these different things. It goes and gets the block contents from the page, and then it even tries to look up more pages about it, right? So it thinks that the simple query of like MCP isn't enough, so it went through other queries to make sure it covered all the content available in Notion, and I eventually get a summary of the page. It's literally one page I added for this, just so that you can see it's like this little page for this. So it found this under my personal namespace. So pretty cool, right? Seeing the planning happening and seeing how it was able to get an error, respond to that error, adjust its plan. The final thing I'll show with this is that the value of this MCP catalog that we've got in Docker Desktop is that it's one place to configure many agents, because I think that's really what we're all going to experience. Is not everybody's going to use Claude desktops. We're going to be in Cursor sometimes. We're going to be in Warp. We're going to be in Claude sometimes. We're going to be in other ones, and you don't want to have to go and configure your agents 10 different times. You want the same tools available, just like you as a human have the same tools available at all times. So through this, through the MCP catalog, you can now do this in one place. I'm in Cursor now. Just to show the settings real quick, it's pretty straightforward when you go to manage this stuff. All you need to do is add a server. It's the simple instructions that I showed in the catalog. It's like the same kind of configuration setup that was in Claude Desktop. So great. When I open up a chat window, let's open up a new chat. Some things in Cursor that are important: you have to be in agent mode, not ask mode. Otherwise, it's not going to do the interactions. So I should, but I have the same tools available. Oh, I didn't show you that. Let me show you that real quick. I have some of the same tools available, but I have to refresh and actually to get them. So there is this refresh loop that you have to do with the MCP hosts. Like Claude, I had to Command R. Here is a refresh button. Sometimes it doesn't always work. You can tell early space. This will get better over time. But I should be able to do the same exact thing in Notion now. So let's go to let me copy my prompt again. And, I wanted to not do that. Here, let's see what it does when I'm asking it to summarize it again. And I'm gonna put my extra little prompt in there so that it works. but it's going to be doing the same exact back and forth. It might follow a different plan. It might do some more things. It might not be as thorough as Claude was, but it's going to be following the same steps. You'll notice it's actually automatically running the tools instead of asking me for it to allow me to do it, because I configured it to be in YOLO mode, which is kind of fun. Probably not recommended, but good for a demo. It's doing the same exact things that that Claude was doing, where it's searching, getting the contents, and because I gave it that little extra bit of prompting, it knew exactly how to call my tool with the right parameters and get the contents of the page back. So pretty cool that it works in both places, all through the MCP catalog. All right. I think that worked pretty well. All right, so to recap, we started with a little bit of journey from models to agents, how we are, models are great for really that on executing a task. Even if the output is variable and creative, it's really there to execute single tasks. But then in this age of agents now, we're starting to, I think, have them run much more non-deterministic, solve much more non-deterministic problems, do more of that planning, more of the creative work, as well as the execution. We saw how the model context protocol from Anthropic is kind of a game changer in terms of enabling the explosion of all these agents and enabling them to do more and more through a standard protocol. And then hopefully you saw how containers really are going to help this entire ecosystem grow and be more secure and more transportable to all of our lives through that. So you can try the Docker MCP catalog today. You can just go to that link or click on the QR code or just search in Docker Desktop extensions for it. You can follow us on LinkedIn and our GenAI blog. We have a lot of content coming out pretty much every week. A lot of the stuff I showed today is on there. And then I'd love to hear from all of you about other MCP servers you think we should be adding, what kind of tasks you want it to do, and maybe pitfalls that you think we need to start thinking about avoiding. And with that, thank you very much.